Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for joining me for another episode of Spilling the Tea. Today, I was joined by Kyle Dovigi. Kyle is a real estate entrepreneur, investor, and he's got a really cool Magic the Gathering collection that I can't believe some of these cards are worth. He said up to $1 million. Anyway, he discusses a little bit how he got into real estate. We jump into some markets that are a little bit more reasonable when it comes to wanting to invest in. So he's dual licensed here and then in another province. So grab a cup of tea and join us. I hope you enjoy it. Hey guys, welcome to Spilling the Tea, a podcast brought to you by Pico Mortgages. I'm your host, Dan Johannes, and in this series, we'll be interviewing some really interesting entrepreneurs, real estate professionals, and really anyone that's got a story that I think is worth sharing with you, the viewers. So sit back, relax. I hope you enjoy it, and please comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Spilling the Tea, a Pico podcast. I am your host, Dan Johannes, and today we've got Kyle Dovigi joining us. And Kyle is a real estate investor. He's also a real estate broker, dual licensed in Alberta and Ontario. He calls himself the Condo Millionaire. And he did this by turning a small amount of money, a deposit of $38,500, into a portfolio of 6 properties, which is pretty fantastic. And it's worth over $4.5 million. So, Kyle, I am so happy to have you joining us today on our podcast to talk a little bit about really how you were able to do that, because that's not not a small feat to take $38,000 and then grow it into a quite a substantial portfolio of real estate holdings. So maybe you can talk to us about a little bit about how you got into real estate, what brought you into the market, and then because you're licensed in Alberta and here in Ontario, I think you've got some great insights that we can kind of talk about in a little bit. But I really want to get an idea of like, how the heck did you do that?
Yeah, Dan, thank you for that introduction. And thank you so much for having me on the show. So I really started out, as your average person working your regular day job. And my journey into real estate really started back in high school. I grew up in Sudbury, Ontario, and I went to high school with a guy named Alex Wilson. Not important for the story right now, that'll come later. But we both went to Laurier, University of Laurier in Waterloo together. And during my 4th year classes, I had an entrepreneurship class. And one of them, the big year-end project, was about how are you going to make money? And I actually did it about investing in real estate. And that's where my passion really started. And that really set the blueprint for how I was going to execute building my portfolio really over the last 10 years. Because I started investing in 2012. Right. And the blueprint, was very simple. You have to buy that first property. That's the key that people don't understand. You got to start with one. And then through refinancing, you, I'm sure, talk all the time about this, is taking the equity out of your properties to buy additional properties.
Right.
So that's where I really started to get passionate. But after school, I didn't follow the real estate path. I actually ended up in poker, online poker at first, with a company called Cryptologic. I was helping to design their actual software, the user interfaces, the functionality behind the scenes. A couple years later, they ended up getting bought out by PokerStars, but had a good run of a couple years there and really enjoyed it. From there, I actually moved on to the Interprovincial Lottery Corporation. And there I actually ran ILC's Lotto Max, Lotto 649, and Daily Grand Draws. These are actual balls that were used in those draws. And I was the draws manager responsible for operating those actual draws. And during my time there, found out that actually about 1/3 of people are planning to fund their retirement by winning the lottery. That didn't sit well with me. I didn't want people gambling on their futures. Lottery funds are used for a lot of good things, but that should not be your retirement strategy.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So ended up where my buddy Alex Wilson, who I grew up in high school, we went to Laurier together. We were best men at each other's weddings, really good friends. He's like, Kyle, you're not really passionate about this job. He's actually one of the top realtors in all of Toronto. He was number 3 for Remax last year for the number of transactions. He's like, why don't you come join me? You're really passionate about real estate. You've been investing with me over the last 10 years. You can teach the courses that I do. You probably know more about it in a lot of cases than I do, especially the minute details. So I'm like, you know what? I thought about it, hummed and hawed for months, probably years even, before I finally did take that jump to get licensed. And that was back in really 2019, I think, just in time for the pandemic to hit.
Yeah.
But that taught me a lot of things. And the best agents actually outperform during those tough times. Because when there's bidding wars, 20 bids, it's easy to be an agent. It's during the tough times, the recessionary periods, where the really good agents really stand out. So I was forced to really learn the nuts and bolts of the industry beyond the investing knowledge that I had. And that really brings me today, where now I'm actively working with investors across Canada to invest not only in the GTA market, but other markets like Calgary as well. And that's where I'm licensed in Ontario, but also in Alberta to help me do that.
Wow. That is incredible. I mean, it's interesting to kind of hear that story where you go from, it sounds like, pretty much from the time of university, knowing that real estate was something that you were passionate about. And it's also, like you said, taking that first step in purchasing the first home, it can be very daunting for a lot of people. And then having to take on additional debt if you don't really fully understand the power of leverage and being able to use that to grow a portfolio, it can be overwhelming. But it's interesting to hear that you went from getting from lottery, which is like gambling for your retirement, into a very structured process of, okay, well, we have to take certain incremental steps in order to grow a very stable portfolio for retirement or source of income. And I think it's interesting too that during that transitionary phase where your friend Alex Wilson had said, hey, come join me, even though you had invested yourself, you were quite certain with real estate as an investment tool, you still had your hesitation to leave your job to get over. And it's like, I'm sure when you look back, you're like, oh man, that was easy. I should have done it earlier or something, right? But
absolutely, and I should have, but I actually took different entrepreneurial paths during that time. Because in 2008, I got killed in the stock market. That's what was going to be my funding for not only my principal residence, the condo that I was going to live in, but also my investment funds. So I went a different path, and I went into investing in magic cards and retailing.
What?
I was actually one of the biggest investors and retailers in Canada. I was about the third largest retailer for several years, back around 2008 to about 2012.
That's unbelievable. So you
still almost did that full time as well, but decided and just backed off from it.
Is it a viable investment these days?
It's the best returning investment that I've ever had.
Really?
I got in during kind of the best possible times. Think GTA 20 years ago. That's the time I got in with magic cards. And since then, especially during the pandemic, all sorts of sports card, trading cards, they've exploded in value. People, have a lot of money now that, our kind of age, that grew up with these sorts of things, and they're starting to invest, and they're actually becoming investment assets around it as well. So there's fractional ownership, things like that too, where they're becoming a legitimate investment vehicle.
That's interesting, because I've got an entire capsule from 1991 when I was before I was a teenager, and we put a whole bunch of upper deck playing cards. I think I've got a couple Nolan Ryans in there, but maybe I should dig it out and see if there's anything worth. If
they're gem mint, they might be.
Yeah, I mean, they're in pretty decent. I think they're in mint shape. Back then, it was the thing to do. But interesting to hear how magic. There's quite a demand for it, and you can make some good money. I guess it's not like the Beanie Baby craze where people were like separating them in divorce courts because it's like, you couldn't take the whole lot.
My mother-in-law still has them. I still think, full bedroom full of them. We were trying to convince her that there's no value, but just hanging on to them still.
It's like the VHS tapes. My parents have unsealed VHS tapes from like Little Mermaid and stuff. I don't think it's worth much, but hey, whatever. Maybe it'll come back. Who knows? That's quite the that's quite the journey there, though. And you've put a bunch of hats on. I think that really makes us, your wins, there's so many, I guess, different types of lessons that you can learn through both wins and losses through life, right? And I've talked to people that have had, they were stung at a certain time getting into real estate, and they're like, no, I'm not doing it again, or they got cold feet and they left. And I think really being able to kind of say, okay, well, what did you learn from this? And aligning yourself with someone that is able to kind of help you find sort of the value investing and so forth. Like, your cards, your real estate, but at the same time, you still had someone like Alex say, hey, you know what, I'll mentor you, I'll bring you on board and show you how to kind of get your business to the next level. And I think that speaks volumes there. So what do you, as far as, what do you specialize in? I know you're called the Condo Millionaire. Is it only condos, or is that how you made your money in?
No, my preferred investment mechanism is condos, pre-construction condos specifically, because it's the easiest possible way for the average person to invest in real estate, because you're just putting your deposit down with the builder. And then in many cases, waiting 3, 4, 5, 6 years for it to be built. You can't get any more passive than that. There's literally nothing for you to do. There's no tenant in the property yet because it's not even completed.
Right.
So maintenance as well is very easy. It's 4 walls and some appliances inside. You don't have to worry about the roof. You don't have to worry about snow removal, anything like that, because it's the building and the management there that's taking care of it.
Yeah, it's pretty turnkey.
If you don't want to be, sorry?
Yeah, it's pretty turnkey in that regards. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you don't want to be actively managing it, doing Airbnb, house hacking, burn method, there's tons of different ways to make money, but you have to actively be doing it. So for the average person that has a regular job, it's the best and easiest way. And that's how I personally have built my investment portfolio. It's just pre-construction condos. But there's definitely opportunities out there in townhomes, in detached properties, in things that will cash flow and give you good appreciation over the long term.
Right. Yeah, and that's truly passive, right? Because a lot of people that might be watching this, they're like, well, I don't have the time to be a landlord. I don't have the time to go and, if the roof needs fixing or foundation or something to take care of that. And yeah, this is a great way to kind of jump in.
That's exactly right. And I always say I want to be a real estate investor. I don't want to be a landlord. That's the necessary evil later, because I want to hold my properties forever. That's my investment timeline, but I want to delay that as far as I can. Because once you become a landlord, it tends to be more emotional. You're dealing with people and their actual situations. So if I can push that off, I'm all for that.
So for as you buy these properties, Kyle, and then you start finding tenants, are you getting like a property management company to jump in and manage the asset for you? What's your recommendation for someone?
Fantastic question. In most cases, I'm doing it because I'm in the industry. I'm easily able to do it.
Right.
And for condos, I've had one condo for about 5 years. I've gotten 2 phone calls in that time. One, they couldn't open the door, and the other was a plumbing issue. So, condos, they tend to be low involvement, low management. And it's all about screening your tenants up front as well, so that you don't run into those issues.
Right.
But I always recommend to clients, try it for a couple months. See if you're able to manage, see if you can do it. If not, property management's always there. You can always hire a property management company. That's more for your GTA properties where you can go visit the property. We're close by, 30-minute drive, something like that. For properties in Calgary, I say by default, just go with property management. It's a couple provinces over, different time zone. Just make your life easy. The cash flow still works with you paying for property management as well. You can still try it out. You can order anything online, but that's the path that I'm directing clients now.
Yeah. And I think, being able to just kind of, you hit a good point there with tenants, because sometimes if you get into the role of being landlord and being so involved, it becomes a very emotionally draining situation to be in. I know a gentleman that had a 12-plex, but he stepped up from, basically said, let's go all in, and went the way of commercial, but it was too much. It was just too much because he was involved with every tenant, and he knew every tenant's backstory, and it became a very emotionally driven thing. And being able to either just try it out is a great idea. And I think doing property management too is a great way to have an asset that is basically set it and forget it, and it's low overhead too. I'd imagine property management fees aren't too much when you have them dealing with something like a condo, right?
Yeah, in Toronto, we've got a secondary firm, Access Property Management. It's $120 a month plus tax to manage your condo.
Oh, wow. That's pretty reasonable. Considering, I mean, rental, the rental rates right now for condos are just pretty strong. My understanding, because we're ordering a lot of market rent reports, and we're seeing that the trend is a very strong rental market. Wow, very cool.
So right now, there's just a article in the Star where some rents are up 54%.
Wow, that's strong,
like
GTA.
Absolutely seeing it. Like, I rented out my condo. The tenant actually left during COVID because she could upgrade, get a bigger unit for the same price. I ended up getting a price increase during the pandemic because it was so far under market. Because it was rent controlled, I wasn't able to adjust the rent. But this time I was able to adjust it to what the market rate was, which was quite a bit higher. Perfect. And now it rented for $250 more, a similar unit. And that was just about a year and a half later, which is, a 15 to 20% increase. So I'm definitely believing and seeing that rents are jumping up considerably in Toronto, especially, but also in Calgary too.
Mm. So for condos, because I've owned some condos in the past too, and one of the things that kind of, I guess, concerned me was when you have sort of maybe a special assessment or a condo isn't properly managed, right? I haven't had it personally as an issue. I found they were fairly straightforward and managed well. But is there any sort of cautionary tale or warning that you could possibly share in things to watch out for? Like, is it really important to be working with a developer and a property management company or a condominium? Like, are they all created equal, or are there some that are just known for maybe workmanship that could affect things, or even setting
Absolutely.
fees lower or whatnot? Yeah.
And that's one of the main concerns that I get from people are management of the building and condo fees. People hate paying condo fees. Yeah. But I'll look at the condo building in Florida that actually collapsed because it wasn't properly maintained.
That's right. Yeah.
That's the worst case scenario, obviously.
Right.
You need property management to be properly maintaining the building. And that's what your condo fees go to. They either go to paying the utilities or to the management and upkeep of the building.
Right.
So I'm not bothered by condo fees. It's part of the game, and that's part of the set it and forget it plan, where you're never going to have to put a new roof on it. You're never going to have to get the bricks repointed. You're never going to have to mow a lawn. That's embedded into the condo fees. And then property management is the one actually taking care of the building. Right. Now, this is where there have been some issues in the past, but you always want a good property management company in there. And there are many good ones. This is for the building, not property management actively managing your unit. Those are two separate things. So building management is taking care of the building itself and making sure that that is properly maintained.
That's a great point too, because I think some people might get that confused, property management on the unit versus the entire building. Two different things. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm not bothered by condo fees. You watch it and manage it over time. In Toronto, they typically start at around 60 cents a square foot. The average is probably closer between 70 and 80, for a 5 to 10-year-old building. I've seen older buildings over $1, which is very expensive. So want to watch out for that and what the trend is going like. That could eventually be a reason that you want to exit that investment. But for the most part, you're just paying that. That's just the regular cost of the upkeep. Right. In Calgary, the cost is much closer to 40 cents because they have much lower cost of living over there. Everything is just cheaper, gas, electricity, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, right.
But what's more important is dealing with a really good, reputable builder, because you're going to hear stories in the media. They love to blow this up where builders are canceling projects or they're doing assessments where you need to pay $100,000 more in order to get the unit.
Right.
I've seen that.
I've heard both.
Been the small time players that aren't able to properly hedge their risk. They're very subject to commodity fluctuations. They don't have access to big financial markets like the big players do. Companies like, Minto, Truman, and Calgary, they have their own labor forces. They're not going out to the market and hiring separate companies. They're actually controlling kind of end to end their entire production. So it's those sorts of companies that are better able to weather delays and fluctuations in the financial markets, in commodity markets, in labor markets. So you always want to be dealing with, good, reputable, larger builders for the most part. The medium size can definitely be fantastic as well. Like Morrison in Calgary is a smaller company, but more medium sized, but they deliver a fantastic product. So really look out for that reputation and the past track record that they have building in the market that you're buying in.
Right. I think it's so important, because a lot of people that jump in and they see, oh, maybe this community or development, it sounds like a really good deal, but you don't know. Years ago, my parents, before we got into investing, they didn't know, right? And they went in on a smaller developer. Luckily, Terrion stepped in because it had folded, they got their deposit back, but it was one of those lessons that was a hard lesson to learn. And I think this is why it's so important. Someone like you that can step in and you have the knowledge, you have the experience and the inside sort of scoop on what developers to kind of go with and other ones to be a little bit more cautious when proceeding. So that's where the value of what you're doing really comes into play. And so I've got a question for you, Kyle. We're clearly, the tide is turning, right? In the GTA, we're seeing that home prices are not where they were before. There's not as much demand. Bidding wars aren't like they were back in January, February, even last year. So there's a little bit of uncertainty. And when we add on to that, high fuel prices, high cost of food, high everything, inflation going through, ceilings they haven't seen before. I think in the US, the Feds had announced 8.6% inflation, which we haven't seen in like 30, 35, 40 years, something crazy like that. And then when we get north of the border here, we're looking at additional rate increases. I think overall, when we look at it, obviously interest rates are still, pre-pandemic, we were sitting at a 5-year fixed of around 3.59%. So we're not too far off there, but it's still creating enough turbulence in the market that people are uncertain. So I guess the question is, someone wanting to get into the market or maybe even exit and look to sell, what's your advice to them right now? Should they stay on the sidelines? And yeah, what do you see happening right now? Let's focus on Toronto, because then we can jump into the exciting part of Calgary.
Awesome. Yeah. And the media loves to jump on these sorts of stories where prices are absolutely down overall. But really, there's two different markets. There's the outer GTA market and the central Toronto market. The GTA had exploded in a lot of different areas, even parts of Southern Ontario. We're up 40%. Cities that I had to look up on the map of where they were. And there was no sustaining factor there. So when just a little bit of demand started being pulled back because of rising interest rates, you saw the market, the bottom just fall out of it.
Right.
Whereas in Toronto, and especially the core, it's weathering it much, much better. Now, there's definitely price weakness. People are scared. There's fear out there. And I've even seen people giving away properties right now that they don't need to, because there's no catalyst for it. They're not losing their mortgage. They still have jobs. It's not doom and gloom, even though that's what the feeling is out there right now.
Yeah.
So prices are coming down. There is going to be definite price weakness, especially for, fixer-uppers, second and third tier properties with wow factor. They're still setting records. They're still going multiple offers, anything good and quality, because there have been so many people trying to get into the market that there's tons of people sitting on the sidelines and have been there for years waiting to jump in. And a lot of people are seeing this as their opportunity. Now, for people looking to sell, I say don't do it unless you absolutely have to, because real estate is a long-term game. You want to stay invested in the market. There's no way to time it perfectly. So don't even try. Just invest and stay invested. But I will say that there will be opportunities coming up as well, especially on the assignment market, because a lot of people bought with assignment. That's their entire investment strategy. And now they may not even be able to qualify for a mortgage anymore. They were already over leveraged, and that's what they were planning to do. And they're going to be like, oh crap, I need to get out of this investment and I need to get out quick. So over the next kind of 3 to 6 months, I could definitely see opportunities coming. For resale, I think there are going to be opportunities there as well. The challenge with, especially downtown, was cash flow. Cash flow situation was brutal. You just could not make the numbers work anywhere close. Now, with prices coming down, rents spiking up,
right,
the equation is suddenly changing, and you're coming back into a more equalized market where these properties will start to become pretty close to cash flowing. So I see huge opportunity in the Toronto market. It's about right now waiting, letting some of that fear, play out a little bit. But when those opportunities come, jump on them. And a lot of my investors are, that they're planning to. They did it when COVID started. And I had a good friend invest, bought a unit for $700,000. It's worth almost $1 million now. It was an assignment that he picked up. I actually found for him.
Wow.
But he was so scared to do it. And now he's laughing. He's up 50%, on the purchase price, which is incredible. So there will be those opportunities.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point. I think anytime there's a little bit of uncertainty or change, a shift in the tide there's a lot of opportunity if you know where to look. Interesting you point on the assignments too. So if someone is interested in picking up an assignment property, how do they do that? Do they come to you and then you find it? Because obviously I don't think that would be something that would be out there in the open market for them to just, I'm going to go on realtor.ca or whatever and find an assignment, right?
Exactly. And most of the time, you're not even able to advertise the assignments on realtor.ca or MLS. It's actually written into your purchase agreements for the most part. So there's definitely secondary markets that mainly agents and brokers have access to. So definitely want to work with a reputable agent like myself that can find those assignments for you.
Fantastic. That's awesome. And yeah, you had a good point there too. Like a lot of people, like any type of market, it ebbs and flows, like your magic cards. I'm sure at some point they're worth a heck of a lot, then went down and then it's up. So, in this, in this industry too, it's just kind of a matter of weathering the storm and not jumping too early out of it, because you have, asset appreciation that's happening. You have someone, ideally, if you're renting out the property, someone is paying your mortgage for you. So, you have principal reduction. And so it's a really good way of being able to build equity and build a little bit of a nest egg there if you can just weather it. And oftentimes I see this too with clients that are like, they're really afraid of, well, what does this mean for my affordability? Should I do fixed? Should I do variable? And you kind of have to step back for a second and say, okay, well, let's take a look at where things were prior to the pandemic, and even going back to the early 90s and where interest rates are, because in the overall grand scheme of things, it's really not that bad. And yeah, just try not to I guess let emotion dictate what happens, right? It didn't take, you didn't get to where you are by reacting every time there was a little blip in the market. It was methodical, and literally from the time you started, finished at Laurier there, there was, everything was built upon sort of that catalyst to, okay, well, this is sort of the next step I need to take in order to achieve that goal. So for anyone that might be concerned and say, okay, well, you know what, I'm outpriced. I can't afford it. And I had posted a few TikToks that really kind of, I'm on TikTok. Yeah. And it triggered something with a lot of people. I think one of them over the weekend has got like 400,000 views. I got hundreds of comments. I had to shut everything off because they were like, there's no way. Everything's just overpriced, Dan. Like, we can't afford, you don't understand in this market. And so the question is, if someone wants to start an investment portfolio they can't afford here, is there any other place in Canada that they could maybe invest in, Kyle?
Yeah, and that's the challenge that I see every single day, not only for investors, but end users, people that want to buy a property to live in themselves, is they're just priced out of Southern Ontario for the most part. The lowest prices are really about $1,000 a foot. So when you get a one bedroom that's 500 square feet, that's $500,000 without parking. That's out of range for a lot of people. Yeah. So
let alone a family, right? It's like just there's not enough. Yeah, there's not enough room.
Absolutely. So that's how I actually got started selling in Calgary. because Calgary offers an investment product that I can't get you anywhere else in Canada. You have prices starting out, when I started selling about 2.5 years ago in Calgary, they were in the 100s. I got units for 190,000 for clients for one bedroom with parking. More suburban location, wasn't downtown, but just about anyone can afford that and qualify for the mortgage for that as well. But they were coming with rental guarantees. I was getting 5-year rental guarantees for some of the projects, just a couple of years ago, because that's what investors needed to have confidence to be able to put their market down in Calgary. Because Calgary people were down on it for so long. Coming with free property management during the rental guarantee periods as well, making it completely passive for you, no extra costs, and cash flowing like crazy. Even condos were cash flowing $100, $200, $300 a month. Detached properties with finished basements, some of them were between $500 and $1,000 a month cash flow in today's dollars. I can't get any of those things in any Toronto or GTA property. Maybe one of them. I've seen rental guarantees in a few properties, but they still don't even come close to cash flowing. So Calgary affordability is amazing when you compare it nationally and really amongst other large Canadian cities, where I still have units right now at a project, $325,000 to start. The deposit is 10%, $32,500. That's how I got started with my real estate portfolio. Mine was $38,400. So almost identical to that. Putting your money down, letting it sit in the market and letting it appreciate. Even detached houses, those are in the 700s, possibly up to about 850 for a good area with a legal basement unit in it as well.
That's crazy.
You can't get a detached house for under $2 million. New.
Yeah, and especially if you're using it as an investment vehicle, right? Because it's just, you've got a lower price point, you've got high rents, and the rental guarantee. So, guys, full disclosure here. I've actually invested in one of the developments that Kyle was working on with developer Minto, and it is in Calgary. I was a little bit, I was comfortable with the city, and part of that is my wife and I, we've traveled there quite a bit to the Rockies, and it was a place that I was familiar. And I was comfortable in investing in. But it's also, for someone that might be on the sidelines and say, hey, well, it's 2 provinces. Is it 2 provinces? Yeah, we're 2 provinces away. Manitoba, Saskatchewan. Yeah.
I had to do the math too.
So for us being here in Ontario, is it possible to manage a property realistically in 2 provinces over? And how does that look? I mean, it's Can you speak a little bit on that?
Fantastic question. And a simple answer is everything is done remotely. You can buy the property without ever going to Calgary. Purchase agreements are signed online. You do the deposits at your local bank. And then when you actually get the unit a couple of years from now, a lot of them are coming with property management. So they're managing the unit for you.
Right.
Or you just hire property management, to manage the unit.
Yeah.
In Calgary, the most you should need to pay is 10% of gross rent. So if the rent's $1,500 a month, you'd be paying $150 plus GST.
Right. Which is pretty.
And that's how you're going to do it, So just know it's a couple provinces over. Just accept that. Make it a passive investment for you. You should only need to be involved if you need to cut a check for repair or something like that, or make a decision regarding the unit that property management can't do for you. That's about it.
Yeah, it seems pretty straightforward. I mean, we've helped out some clients in Calgary, and outside of the pre-construction stuff that we've helped some of your clients with too. We're just seeing people in general wanting to buy in Calgary and the surrounding areas. And it's a fairly, as far as if anyone's wondering, the mortgage process or the financing process, very easy to do. Everything's done, same thing, digitally online. So it's not a very difficult process to get it done, even here in Ontario. So yeah, it's exciting to see. And I think one of the things you had mentioned there is the rent guarantee, and that had me thinking, well, I'm sure that these developers have deeper pockets that you and I do, and they've probably done the research into a calculated risk and having a rent guarantee.
We're talking about billion-dollar companies here. Right. They have teams of analysts you can be darn sure that they've done the numbers. And I even think that they're being a little conservative on those guarantees as well, because they're on the hook for it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So they want to make sure that the risk is fairly low for them, and they're not they're not overexposing themselves when it comes to that. Yeah, we had the opportunity. We went to meet with the folks at Minto and toured some of the developments there. And I'll tell you, like, just from like, it kind of makes me wish I could just move there too, because some of these communities are just gorgeous, you know, and the views of the Rocky Mountains, even from Calgary, some of the places you can get incredible views. And it's just, for anyone might be interested in either moving there or starting a rental portfolio, I think either way, it's a fantastic way to go. So yeah, you've got the inside scoop on some of the pre-construction stuff. We can link to it below too, because I know you sent me some stuff that's recently hit the market. So I'm happy to share that with our viewers as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Dan. There's great projects constantly launching as well. Again, I work with the major developers.
Right.
So there's constantly, you know, condos, townhomes, detached, whatever your investment goals are, definitely something available in Calgary for you.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay. Any sort of, I guess we'll wrap this up soon, but is there any, Kyle, I really appreciate you coming on here and talking to us a little bit, one, about your journey into real estate. And I'll probably have to talk to you a little bit about your magic collection, because that interests me. I think it's kind of neat. But also, yeah, getting into real estate and then helping people out. And I think the being able to, get people into, especially with the uncertainty in this market, just with everything, right? Some of the conversations I have with people, family, friends, just not knowing what's going on and what's in store for the future. I think consistently we've seen that real estate is an investment vehicle that's pretty sound, and it's a great place to park your money in times of uncertainty. You know, there's definitely investments out there to be found. It's just being able to uncover them and work with the right people. So yeah, I really appreciate you coming on today on the podcast. If anyone needs to contact Kyle, I'll leave your contact information below. And thanks again for joining us. And we'll catch you guys on the next episode.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay, take care.
Take care.